Welcome everybody to Dine with the Divine. I'm Ashley, your host, as usual, the same person as last week. And today we're going to be exploring the mystical, the magical, everything in between, culture and all that good stuff. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about the history of smelling good and a lady who was mad because she wasn't getting any. So I'm going to introduce our fantastic guest today. Mauricio Garcia is an animistic perfumer based in San Francisco Bay Area. His work aims to nourish the relationship between perfume, people, and the more than human world. Mauricio's inspiration is born from the fragrance ecology of the Pacific West Coast, the marine fog, redwood forest. I'm petrified of redwoods, but we'll talk about it later. The golden grass hills, home to butterflies, coyotes, and many other beings. Also scared of coyotes, but we'll talk about that later too. Rooted in perfumery's ancient origins and ancestral veneration, Herbcraft Perfumery is a boutique fragrance studio that specializes in the creation of fine fragrances, fragrant enchantments, and ritual anointments. Mauricio draws upon 18 years of working and learning from herbalists, medicine makers, master craftswomen of perfumery, spiritual practitioners, and of course plants and spirits themselves. He's an advocate for perfumery's stewardship of the environment and its reclamation as a sacred substance. Hey, how are you, Mauricio? How's it going?
I'm well. I'm super stoked to be here. I've listened to all of your other episodes and they've been really fun. I've been following along, so I'm very honored to be one of your guests. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
I'm excited for our conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So, first of all, first question. Okay. How did this become a interest of yours? Has it been something you've always been interested in, or was there something that sparked your interest about perfumery? Like, what made it happen for you here?
I think that, what made it happen? I suppose I can answer that with some vague whatever, but I can actually give you a dream that was the crossroads where I can decide whether I wanted to pursue this or not. Herbcraft was originally more of a skin care and treatment line. I did a lot of formulation around different types of treatments, including therapeutic and just for enjoyment teas. And so I was introduced to natural perfumery by a dear friend, Ella Gluckman, whose mentor is Mandy Aftel, who everyone should definitely check out. She's super cool. She's like the godmother, Beyonce of natural perfumery. She's pretty badass. But anyway, she was like, you need to read my mentor's books, and I think you'd be really into it. And so I did. And then I had this really crazy, intense dream. I came to in the way of dreams in this kind of dark room that looked like a study or a library or some place that someone did work. And there's this like long table that I of course dream of having now down the middle of this book-lined room. And on the table were all of these different beakers and piles of paper and books and jars and all kinds of stuff and like perfume bottles. And suddenly this like wind picked up in this room, and all the bottles and papers and stuff started to whirl around themselves into this kind of cyclone, and the bottles started to glow. And I heard this voice, like in the way of dreams, that if I put in the time to learn the craft, I could learn the secrets for conjuring and binding spirits into fragrances and bottles.
What?
Yeah, so I was like, why wouldn't I do that?
You were like, yeah,
and here I am.
Great.
Here I am like 7 years later.
Oh my God, that is so cool. Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say besides I'm very grateful that that pathway opened up to me. It's certainly been an alignment. It feels as though everything I've learned certainly lends itself to this craft. And yeah, I feel very fortunate to be able to do it for a living with that. Obviously, I wish there wasn't all these other elements tied to it. I wish I could just make things for people. I do think that in another version of our society, that is what I would be doing.
Yeah, I think another version of our society, a lot of people would be doing this.
Yeah. Well, someday that version will just be in a future time
Yes.
space as opposed to an alternate universe.
That's what I think too.
Cross our fingers.
I know. Okay. So my other question is, you are not petrified of redwoods as I am?
Oh no, I love them.
Okay, that's good to know. I've never seen a redwood in person, but I have, yes, me and my mom, I think I inherited, we have this weird fear of very large natural structures, and just seeing redwoods makes me anxious. I'm like, oh, no, we don't, I live in the East Coast, we don't have trees that big, so I'm like, oh, I can't handle it.
I'm like, who are you? What do you know? What can you tell me?
I know, right? They must be so old, so
Yeah.
they know everything.
That like there are trees that are older than our some of our more popular religions.
Yeah.
It definitely they put things into perspective.
That is so crazy. Oh my God. Okay. Now we got over that question. Because I was like, I have to talk about this for 1 second. I will find somebody who is as petrified other than me and my mom.
Or you'll meet one and you're going to fall in love.
Maybe. I know. I do love a tree. I love a tree, but I just like the sheer size is just like, they're so thick.
Yeah, they can be pretty massive. Like some of them, like the way the roots have grown / roads / human ingenuity, you can drive through them, like below them. And they're still alive and they're still like supporting their babies around them and all that.
And so my friend who's an herbalist, she was telling me how she like read this book that talk about how trees can talk to each other basically with their roots. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, and with aromatic molecules.
What?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's why I love it so much. It's definitely like my childhood potion making fantasies come to life.
That's so cool. Okay, with the molecules in the air, so the trees like release molecules?
Trees and different types of plants will release molecules. Obviously, the scent of flowers are something that we're very familiar with, and those smells are totally meant to attract pollinators, although they also use the same molecules to ward away harm or predators. But it just depends on the interspecies relationship. It's the lock and key situation, similarly to how we would be drawn to the smell of a luscious mango or some other ripe fruit to spread the seeds for the plant in exchange for food. But yeah, it's totally signaling smell. I'm sure we'll get into it, but smell is our oldest sense before sight, before sound, before touch. It was
yes. Okay. Oh, this leads me to more questions. Okay. So it's so funny because you wouldn't think of that with trees. Everybody would think of it with flowers. And flowers, like, they have specific colors and smells, and bees love them because they're colorful. But you don't think that with trees. Trees, you just think like they're there, they're in the ground, and that's it. And okay, fine.
I do think that I know what I know within my sphere, but trees, I do think it's just so fascinating that there's all of these different types of communications that we are. The majority of life on this planet is bacteria, right? And then there's plants and animals and fungi, and we're more like plants and obviously animals and fungi than we are these other bacteria. Yeah. And we're also like made up of them. It's a whole thing, and I find it all very fascinating. But yeah, they talk to each other with these interconnected serpentine network, look like our own neurons, but also look like the patterns of galaxies in the heavens. And so it's just like this. And then at the same time, they work with the spirits of the air, carry their messages to each other. Yeah, I love it all.
Sometimes I had the same feeling that I'm talking to you now that I had when I was in nursing school and I took biology, anatomy and physiology. And I was like, everything is just working. This crazy interconnected system it just works. And like you're saying, and then there are these molecules, and then the air carries the molecules over here, and then they were like, oh hey tree, we're also the kind of tree that you like, and then it's the bees.
or other species, or then bees eat pollen and essential oils from plants, and then they like alchemize these essential oils and aromatic molecules to create their own communications with each other. And I'm doing the same thing, just in a different way, at a different scale, a smaller scale, if you think of this entire species using these compounds in that way.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm obsessed. This is so cool.
Yeah, magic.
It is magic.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my God, there's so many things in the world that are magical that like we take for granted. Something like you're talking about, like the trees or even perfume itself. Like it's so magical that like you bring together these, and it's there's like a whole, I've been reading a lot about perfume the past couple weeks, and like there's a
Ah,
whole thing to it.
oh yeah.
There's top notes, there's middle notes, there's this, there's that, and
And that all has to do with volatility, which is
yes,
another air element aspect of,
yes.
although they're very also earth, being carbon molecules and all such,
Yes, and
and
you're like,
fire, subtle spirits, the whole thing.
yes, it's fascinating. So one thing I know you really do, and we just talked about it a little bit in your bio, how like you're really into talking about sustainability. So can you, because I tried to understand this, but I didn't. So can you explain to me a little bit about what goes on in like the not regular, but like perfume industry in general? Like where are they getting all these scents and stuff? Because
Oh
like
yeah.
you, and I think of, and no offense to like Britney Spears or whoever, but like you see like cheap like perfumes in like Walmart or wherever, and then you see there are these perfumes that are thousands of dollars, and I'm like, are the ingredients different? I just want to I don't understand what's going
Yeah.
on here. Yeah.
I'm happy to give you a little just so fragrances are made up of aromatic molecules, as we've been that those words that we've been
Mm-hmm.
saying, and all those molecules are they all come from either an extracted source, so like an essential oil from a plant, very frequently botanical essences like rose oil or jasmine absolute, which is a solvent extraction of
It's hella expensive too,
the
right?
yeah, they're very pricey because it's thousands of pounds of something like a rose or a jasmine to make a single pound of oil or
Mm-hmm.
absolute. The difference between an essential oil is it goes plant matter is put through a steam distillation process, and then the essential oil is collected. An absolute is a solvent extraction where plant matter is dissolved with a solvent, an organic solvent, carbon dioxide,
Mm.
hexane, and then
Oh,
it's turned into this like fragrant, lumpy mass of
okay.
plant melted petals, pretty much melted plants, wax, and all kinds of pigments and all kinds of things. And then
Okay.
that's tinctured in alcohol, and that creates the absolute.
Oh,
There are also older slash less industrial extraction techniques that can be utilized, like tinctures, enfleurages, which is layering a single layer of a delicate flower that cannot be extracted from with a intense essential distillation or solvent extraction, things like lilac or poisonous plants like daturas and lilies of
mm.
the valley that won't the aromatic compounds won't survive the high heat and intensity of the distillation. So you can imagine, where do plants come from? Very frequently monocultures. So these vast fields that derive water from where? Do they are they pulling water from communities that are water impoverished in order to
Mm.
sustain industry? Because these compounds are not only used in perfume, they're also used in flavor. Vanilla flavors, vanilla ice cream, right?
Yeah,
Coffees, all kinds of
yeah.
stuff. These are all, and then scented products as well. So it goes a lot of it goes beyond just perfume into this fragrance industry. So big farms, large farms, industrial size production of plants. And then when you start to think about what the labor might look like, are people paid fairly? Are they treated
Mm-hmm.
fairly? Do they have access to what they need? Does the community in which this business exists have resources, or is money being unevenly distributed? Real issues around that are born of global capitalism that the industry is very much a part of. The fragrance industry is has a very deeply rooted history in colonialism. Fragrance materials were grown in different parts of the world. Slave labor was utilized to grow them until the more modern centuries. And even then, it's still really sketchy. It doesn't mean that it's ethical. The
Mm-hmm.
Amazon still being chopped down to grow whatever. Madagascar is still not being, its biodiversity is still not being protected, and yet we're like harvesting and using all this land to grow these plants.
Yeah.
And so but at the same time, people depend on the production of these materials, or plant beings is a better way of considering them, in order to survive and in order to participate in the global economy, which obviously is not designed to benefit them.
Yeah.
It's designed to benefit a very small selection of people. But it's perpetuated by a very large number of people. And then we get into aromatic, like single molecules. Petrochemical byproducts are make up a large portion of the perfumer's palette. So while we're not pumping fossil fuels out of Alaska to make perfume, we do use byproducts from the fossil fuel industry to produce aromatic molecules because there are all these intricate and infinitely complex molecules, and fossil fuels are this like rich carbon source for starting material. But modern technology has allowed us to begin to synthesize aromatic molecules from alternative sources, things like algae, which is way more sustainable than fossil fuels. And so there's a lot of really cool work being done by some very amazing people around bringing our sources for fragrance into a more ethical and regenerative space. So sustainability generally means producing so that you have enough to continue producing into the future, which is still not very considerate of the planet as an organism or species as having every right to live and thrive on this planet that we regeneration is a much more holistic approach. And so it's really cool to have been able to connect with people that are regenerating the Amazon rainforest, growing cardamom, or protecting endangered species while using like plants that inhibit erosion. And they're like aromatic plants that we don't harvest for the essential oils, but they're plants that are really powerful for protecting landscapes and such.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, there's so many things. Okay, first of all, I always think this too because you were saying it like it's not just a fragrance industry, but it leaks into other things, like you said, flavors and different things. And I always think like
garbage bags smell now.
Oh yeah, that is true. And I love a smelly garbage bag. And now I'm like,
You're like, do they need to smell?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't really need it, but it does smell good. But okay, I don't need it.
Just as a thing, right? Yes. If I don't know if maybe at some point the tech will be that this plastic is a biodegradable plastic that comes from some sort of regenerative plant source that doesn't take up a ton of land, and maybe the fragrance also comes from that. It's not as though it's impossible to create things. I just think that the framework in which we're forced to exist, this capitalistic, patriarchal, oppressive, extractive way of being, keeps easier and cheaper is what is the name of the game still.
Yeah. And it's so crazy because one of the things like so many things. So the other thing I was thinking was you were talking about like a monoculture, I guess, when people, so that I hope I'm explaining it the way you were saying. It's like when somebody's growing all of one thing, right?
Yeah.
So I just remembered reading somewhere at some point in my life about like when the colonists came and they were like, oh, tobacco's super great. We can grow so much tobacco. Right? I think in Virginia, they're like, we're just going to grow tobacco. But the indigenous people, being as smart as they were like, yes, but you can't grow tobacco everywhere all the time because it was destroying the fields. Like it's something that you can only grow in one place because it messes up the soil or something.
But like plants are meant to grow in diverse communities, right?
Yeah.
Where I think in the modern era, people forget where things come from, especially things like food now. In the States, so much is prepackaged. Even like berries come like prepackaged and all these. Anyway, and they're like Frankenstein, gigantic, big old things. And anyway, that's a whole other thing. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Totally fine.
But oh my gosh, that totally made your question fall out. Yes. So plants like to grow in diverse communities, and a good example referencing indigenous North Americans and the Pilgrims are like the concept of the three sisters, right? Like that corn, beans, and squash grow very harmoniously together and flourish when they're together. The nitrogen fixation of one really supports the growth of another, whereas the shade that is cast by one protects the other, and they all support each other. Monocultures deplete land of nutrients. They obviously also will then require inorganic fertilizers that run off into water sources and taint and like give people diseases. And it's really cancer. It's never think the settler mindset never changed. It's exactly as it was when they were like, we can grow a bunch of tobacco. And they're like, wait a minute, what's going on? And they're like, who cares? We're just going to keep doing it. But monoculture's a huge aspect of American industry, American agricultural industry. Look at like corn. Like corn, I think there was a point in time where corn was fertilized with like leftover gunpowder from one of the major wars.
Oh
And it's,
no.
but are we surprised? Are we
No,
surprised?
not surprised at all.
No, and that's like people are made out of that now.
That's crazy to think, right? Like,
yeah, they're made out of all of these things we interact with, including the perfumes that we apply to ourselves. They alter ourselves, our forms, I'm not a huge proponent of the separation of spirit and matter. So I think that it's all very interconnected and things affect each other and affect us.
Oh, I totally agree. Like they say, you are what you eat. Like it is true. And all these things, I think, in addition to affecting the environment, like you said, and our spirits are also part of the environment, and the environment is part of us. We
are
around.
Nature.
Yeah, exactly. We're here, and then we go into the ground, maybe, and depending on how you want to do that. But
yeah, and then who knows? Then the adventure starts.
Exactly. And also, like you talked about, and I think this all the time too with a lot of people being, and there's nothing wrong with being a vegan or anything, but I was talking to somebody and they were like, oh, I have a friend and they're a vegan, and they were on like again, nothing against vegans, but this particular person was like, oh, how like acting like they were superior or whatever. So they were saying we were having this conversation about the fact that of course, it's fine to be vegan, it's fine to be not vegan, whatever, but sustainability goes both ways. Because this person was saying to this friend I was talking to, oh, the meat industry, and it's not great, blah, 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 which is true. Don't get me wrong. But like, it's also true. A lot of people are eating vegetables, me included, that are harvested by people who aren't being paid fairly. Like
100%.
Yeah, so it's all shitty. Yeah. Like, unfortunately.
None of it, it's all design. It all works the way that it was designed to work.
Yeah.
But the design is not for us.
No. And there's so many people in the planet now that it's like, on the one hand, I wish everything was sustainable and equal and fair, and I hope one day in my life that it would be, right? But then you think to yourself, though, there's so many people, though. Before it was a little easier, maybe You tell me what you think.
No, please finish your thought before I insert mine.
Oh, no, it's fine. My thought is always, I just don't know. I think, okay, before colonization, right? Let's say it's like the year 1000. And there are communities where people are able to feed themselves and each other because their communities were very small. So I think now I pray and wish that we had a more sustainable environment, but I'm like, how would we do it on such a big scale? You know what I mean? When there was maybe 1 billion people in the world versus now we're like, what, 8, 9 million, billion? So what do you think about that?
I am going to lock my misanthropy into a closet in my mind and tell him to have a cocktail because he has a lot of opinions about it. And I'm going to say that a lot of it comes down to the way that we exist in the world and the way that we make things, but also what people have access to. And so again, it goes back to things are working the way that they were designed to work. Those of us that live in more urban areas are meant to be dependent upon the increased costs that bringing food into this region requires, right? Part of the design. It's not that rather than designing a city to be a home for not only all the humans that reside in it. Notice I'm saying all. Yeah. Especially that's a very big thing here in San Francisco. Homelessness is an issue as well as ridiculous wealth gap. People talk as though they don't go hand in hand, and they do absolutely. Or people and the species that existed here before, botanical and animal. And if we can rewild cities, then can't we also figure out how to introduce an agricultural system? Like I don't know how. There are many better thinkers and and writers around this topic than myself. And so I certainly encourage people to look to Indigenous leadership, especially for these remodelings of the world. There are people that have really thought about what this could look like, what this transition that really needs to happen could look like, because according to the Dasgupta review, which was completed by Sir Partha Dasgupta, an economist for the UK, for the government of the UK, we are currently making shit as though we have 1.6 planet Earths.
Damn.
That's more than half of what we have. Like, what the hell? That doesn't make any sense.
And there's still people who don't have enough of things that they need.
And things that are exposed to illnesses and disasters that, and in this age, we have the ability to address. But because wealthier nations would rather hoard resources, once again, the hoarding of resources, we aren't a harmonious species. I'm sorry, I'm going to go on to this tangent, but I read it today, and I kind of think you might like it. I don't know.
Everything you're saying is fascinating.
Could dependently be on theme. I don't know. Or it could piss off some people. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't care.
The Y chromosome in our species is disappearing. Yeah, it's happened in species before, including like rat species that exist in like Malaysia and Japan. But that means that like the male of the human species, that gene is degrading. Talk about the patriarchy being obsolete. That's a whole other topic. But what this would necessitate in order for our species to survive is to diversify and develop a new gene, a new gendered gene. But the issue with that is that because our species is so big and so spread out, different genes could develop amongst different populations. And those populations could potentially not reproduce with each other, or wouldn't be able to reproduce with each other. So I don't know what's going on. Yeah. I don't know what the future is going to look like. There's so much. We think evolution happened to rats with the dinosaurs, but we are changing constantly. We are essentially planets ourselves. We are made up of countless microbes, countless beings that have their own experiences within our bodies and make up the emanation that is our identities, or how we see ourselves. And so anyway, it just feels as though the like future of our species is a little more like up in the air than we would like to assume. But also that means that we like know so much. Our species has done so much over the last many thousands of years, over the many ages of that we've been around, right? The age of Taurus saw the development of grand societies in agriculture, ancient Crete, Mesopotamia. The age of Aries is not necessarily my favorite. There's a lot of patriarchy and monotheism became huge themes and such, and we are still figuring that out. And then now we're in the age of Pisces, and sort of slightly madhousey, feels like. But the next is the age of Aquarius, which is very much about technologies and development and the threads that connect the past and the future, and the whole of a species, or the whole of really any kind of entity that is made up of multiple things.
Damn.
Sorry, that's what I was like. I don't know if I should...
Not sorry. That gives me so much to think about, and everything you said leads me to the idea. First of all, like when I said before, there's so many people, but like it's so much bigger than. Well, we just have to think differently. And
exactly.
Yeah,
no one needs to disappear. We don't. Yeah. It's not that anyone shouldn't exist.
Of course.
It's more that, like, how do we use our vast numbers and our desire to live a pleasurable, fulfilling life to make it so that other people and other beings that we share the planet with can also do that. I think there's so much potential for us to do that. I just, what it looks like. Who knows?
And it would definitely, like, and when you talked about, like you said, you live in California and in San Francisco, and I live in New Jersey, and I live right next to New York, and in New Jersey and New York, it's like the same in most parts of the country, I would think, and lots of parts of the world. It's this, like, the wealth gap is insane. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, especially in New York City, you want to get a studio apartment, it's like $3,000. It doesn't make any sense. And then we have all these abandoned, I have one in my town, a giant abandoned factory. And I'm like, it's just been sitting there for years and years. And then people are like, oh, somebody's gonna buy it and make it into these high priced condos. Why? What?
Why?
I'm not opposed to people having money. Like, of course, I like to have money too. That's not a problem. But it's like the immense greed of people. And I feel like this has started to really, the past maybe few years has really grinded my gears. Like the immense greed. There's nothing wrong with people having money and enjoying that money. I wish everyone I knew.
I mean, I think that's where it's like where the issue becomes prioritizing like imaginary numbers over real suffering and real potential for people to have what they need. So it's like, why?
Yeah.
What is the reason, to quote Cardi B?
Exactly. What is the reason? Yes. It's one of my favorites. It's just madness. Okay, so this is fantastic. We're going to move on to our next section because this could go on all day. It will go on another time maybe because I love this conversation. But
I know, we haven't even touched on like spirits and spooks and magic.
I know, exactly. We will definitely touch on spirits and spooks and magic in a couple bits. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the dish of the week. So this week, our dish is something that I had never heard of. And because with our story, we're going to be in Mexico with our story. So our dish of the week is mole.
I love mole.
Okay. I had never heard of mole until about a month or two ago when I was on...
magical.
Oh my gosh. So I was on Facebook and I saw this video that I was at work. Like, I'm not supposed to be doing this, but I didn't care. So I started watching this video.
Who cares? Who gives a shit?
I know. I'm like, whatever. I don't care. So I started watching this video. Yeah, exactly. I started watching this video and it was about this woman who has her own restaurant in Oaxaca. I hope I'm saying that right.
Yeah. Beautiful region of... You should definitely visit. It's my favorite part of Mexico.
Yes, I've seen pictures. It's gorgeous. She has a restaurant there. She makes mole, and in this particular video, she was making what she was saying, and I'll go in. There's different types of mole. So she was making a funeral mole for somebody who died, obviously, and she was explaining how to make it, how she was roasting these chilies, and she has this thing. It's called I hope I'm saying this right, a machete. It looks like, I'll describe it. It looks like a little stool, and it looks like a rolling pin without the ends. And what she would do, this is like the traditional from like way back way that people would grind chilies. So she does this every day. This woman is probably the strongest woman on earth because this looks hard. Like she was going. And she's
I brought one of those back on a plane with me once.
Really?
I was like, am I going to carry this around for the rest of my vacation? It
almost
happened.
It looks like it's made of like granite. Like it looks heavy.
It's a rock. They're pretty fucking heavy.
Yes, it was a heavy thing. And she was grinding.
Those señoras are strong.
Ooh, this lady, I was like, she could pick me up and throw me across the room. This lady, she was so adorable, but I was like, this lady is strong because she was going at it. But so she was grinding all these ingredients and just explaining how like she got let me read what I wrote about it first also. So we'll get back into this lovely woman.
Okay,
but it's
Gemini season.
Oh, and I am a Gemini, so I'm like,
and all my personal planets are Gemini. So no wonder who knows who's coming through.
We're just out here bobbing around. Okay, so mole is a type of, it's like a sauce, and it comes from the Nahuatl language, which is the language of the Aztec Empire, and the language of the Nahua people, which is the largest ethnic group in Mexico. And it's believed that mole comes from Oaxaca, which is known as the land of seven moles, or some people think it comes from the state of Puebla, which is right next door to Oaxaca. So there's different kinds of moles, but every family has like their own variation of their mole. And so the word mole is... So, okay, you might think, I've heard of mole. It's like guacamole. No, guacamole is not really a mole. It's just a sauce made of avocados. So in that way, it's not the same as what we're talking about, but it is like a sauce, but it's different. So don't worry about guacamole. That's not what we're talking about. Oh, I love guac. There is a green mole, but it's not guacamole. It's different. So traditionally, it's made with chilies. But when the conquistadors came and people came from Spain, they started using garlic and different kinds of herbs and spices and mixed it in there. So now it's a little different, obviously, than it was 1,000 years ago, but sounds freaking delicious. So I really like some right now. So a lot of the time people use it for enchiladas. It can be used like a meat sauce, like it's dressing meat, but it looks really good. So here's a couple different kind of moles. There is mole poblano. I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish. I apologize.
No, you're doing great.
Okay, thank you. It's famous. This is like a chocolate mole. So it's a dark color and it's a very rich flavor.
It's my favorite.
Really?
I love, because cacao is of Mexico. It's a Mesoamerican, it's a sacred Mesoamerican plant. Like gods are born of it. Yes. So you can taste that it's meant to be in the mole.
I love it. And sometimes it's used, like you just said, like Mexican chocolate. And I always remember learning this in Spanish class when I was like in 6th grade, that the Aztec people had this like a cacao drink, and it wasn't till, I think, I'm terrible with dates, I've said that before on here, I think it was like the 17 or 1800s, so people made it sweet. It wasn't sweet, and it was always like a sacred thing, like you were just saying. It wasn't like just chocolate. It was really bitter, but it was a sacred ceremonial thing, so people drank it during rituals. So
yeah, because it is entheogenic, so it does have entheogenic properties in that it's like it opens you up to the world of the spirits. And that was like a huge thing for Aztec culture. That's like what all the sacrifices were about. It was like a very interesting theme, just like I'm not going to pop your interrupt you for too long, but it's a very interesting theme. It's like the more human sacrifice was occurring, the more separated from the gods the culture felt. And so like these mass populist sacrifices were like these big shows to show that the leadership, the politicians, were still expressing the will of the gods and not their own to the populace. But then we also know that throughout Mesoamerica, these huge civilizations were just suddenly abandoned by people. And ancient translated writings and things suggest that it was always a part of ancient Mesoamerican knowledge that the further you get from the natural world, the closer to collapse you become.
I mean, it only makes sense though. Like that is so true. And oh my God, I love that. And you think of all these, and I don't think it's only in Mesoamerica, but you do think of it when you think of Mesoamerica. Once conquistadors came, and in other parts of the world, similarly, people were like, oh shit, this is it. Like, you know what I mean? They were like,
it was,
what?
They were like, oh, this is the end of the world. And it was.
This is the end of the world, and it's the end of their world because it's the year 14 something. They're like, we don't know anybody else.
And it's like, we think of it as like the imposition of, we associate the imposition of monotheistic religion, but we don't necessarily understand what that meant, because indigenous Americans exist in a living world. They had not forgotten that the world was alive, that the air that we breathe is alive, that the world that we exhale that the air we exhale is the spirit that we are also contributing to the world, that we are this interconnected conglomerate of different beings. And then you impose this religion that like, no, like the material world is evil. Yeah, you must worship this fertility god pinned to the like crossroads in the sterile heavens, not allowed to return to the like starry heavens, the underworld, but also allowed to descend into the earth. Or so it's like it's a whole thing. We can obviously go on a whole tangent on that. But food is magic, plants are magic, and they remind us that we are of the earth.
Yes. Oh my God. And I just think, sorry.
And mole is fantastic for that.
Yeah. You just made me think of also the fact that like most of these people in animist societies, Mesoamerica being very also animist society before this, They were then told, oh, you know how you guys think everything has spirits? No, that's not true. Everything is just stuff. And like all you need to worry about is being a girl person when you die. Can you imagine the mind fuck that is? You're like, wait a minute.
What? Yeah, like
what?
That doesn't make any sense.
I know. You're like, no, but like the water is here. And it's like, all of these people are seeing things that they're like, no, I know this is alive. Yeah, look at that stream.
Yeah. It's like these are the being, and I know this is a theme for on your channel, like being visited by beings, by spirits, whether they're ancestral or not, is something that when you are of that world occurs more regularly. It wouldn't have been unusual. And suddenly plant spirits or ancestors or demons. Like
and now it's a bad thing. Yeah, and it's something to be frightened of, and it
disempowers the population. They were forced to assimilate into Catholicism, but yet their skin tone being close to that of the earth made them victims of white supremacy simultaneously. They were never going to be the Spanish.
No.
And that was largely about the creation of Mexican culture. That is largely what that was about, the assimilation of indigenous practices and developing an identity that was separate from Europe and yet still mostly benefits white-skinned people that, like myself, this is something that I've thought a lot about, being a white-skinned Mexican person. It's real. It's totally real.
It is. And I always think to be told that, like, you are the wrong looking person in your own country. You're like, but I come from...
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. It's like I come
only
from...
the audacity.
Exactly. Like, oh no, I know that you have lived here and your ancestors have been here for thousands upon thousands of years, but you are... The way you look and who you are is wrong. And you should probably wish that you would look like me. And it's like,
and that is a huge part of Mexican culture to this day. Like, I have relatives that say shit like that. Not so much anymore. But when I was a kid, and it always felt really fucked up, and I obviously didn't understand it as well until I was older. And I was like, wait a minute, this is by design.
Yeah, it all is. And I know I have especially on my like Jamaican side of my family, it's similar. Like my mom has cousins who were like, oh, like they just wanted to marry white people because they wanted light-skinned kids, but you're not lights. Who cares?
It's white supremacy is going to hold on to power however it can, right? Look at where we are now. All these laws and like men throwing tantrums in Target. Like the death throes, but at the same time it's really scary because people are going to be put to harm's way, and like it could go really ugly, but again it's just they know they're obsolete. That's why they're acting.
I know, it's so dumb. Okay, I'm gonna also talk about another mole. Oh my god, I love talking to you. This is so fun. Like, I love how we just go off into tangents about white supremacy. It's fine. I love it. Everything's great. Okay, there's another mole called Mole Colorado, which is also from Oaxaca. And this is did I skip one? Yeah, but we'll go back. This is a red colored mole that's based in blistered tomatoes. It includes raisins, sesame. Ooh, that sounds a little sweet. That's nice. Raisins, sesame seeds, and sweet spices such as cinnamon, cloves, and allspice berries. And it's usually used with enchiladas.
It's a very good.
I like that. Yeah, that sounds delicious. Ooh, I want to go to Oaxaca just to go on a mole tour. I'm sure they have something like that.
Mole and mezcal. Yes.
That sounds delicious.
Yes.
Drink a little bit, eat a little mole, no problem. Okay, we got mole negro. This is the Oaxaca. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. This is the Oaxaca. I knew I was going to say it wrong too. I was like, don't say it wrong. Don't say Oaxaca. That's what I want to keep saying. I know it's wrong. Answer to mole Poblanco, and also features chocolate. However, the name implies it's a lot darker and more intensely flavored than mole Poblanco, and it uses Hoya Santa, which is a medicinal herb with a unique flavor to give it a distinct flavor. And in Oaxaca, it's considered one of the most complicated and difficult moles to master.
Yeah, they're actually very, when they're done traditionally, they're very complex.
Yes, and in the video I watched, and I put the link in the show notes, it takes this woman hours, after she just grills and takes all these seeds out, it takes her hours to simmer this mole. This is a serious process.
If there's a movie that you and your community are interested in watching that kind of romanticizes these labor-intensive processes of making Mexican like water for chocolate, is a really beautiful movie. It's originally a Spanish novel by Laura Esquivel, it was translated into English, so it's available. And it's this woman living in Mexico and making these dishes, and it's very magical. It's magical realism. Her emotion, flavor all of the dishes, and there's all these experiences that happen to the people that eat them when she's in love or when she's sad or all these things. It's really extremely simple, and they come with recipes. Each chapter is a recipe.
Yeah. Oh, all right. I'm gonna put a link to that
too. Movie. Either read the movie or watch the movie or read the book.
Read the book. I'll find that and pull a link to that too. And then we have got mole verde, and this is another Oaxaca mole, and it's bright green in color, and it's not guacamole. It starts with it can be started with a spice mix or a paste, and this is fresh, so it uses a lot of fresh herbs and greens, including cilantro, parsley, spinach, and lettuce. Ooh, I love anything with spinach in it. And they use green chilies and pumpkin seeds for body. Ooh, I like that. And then tomatillos give the sauce a bright tartness. And then we have, and I'm not going to be able to say this, but I'm going to do my best, mole almendrado. I sound so American. Almendrado.
Or a drink. Love it.
Okay.
To have on a yacht. That's what that sounds like.
Oh, yeah, I know. This is a type of mole from the area around Mexico City, specifically San Pedro Atapán. I'm sorry. So sorry I can't say this. Atopcan, where 60% of the moles consumed in Mexico are actually produced. This mole includes fire roasted tomatoes, onions, and garlic, along with sweet spices and a variety of chilies. However, its most distinguishing feature is the generous amount of blanched almonds, which give it the mole a sweet flavor. Okay. The lady in the video that I watched, that I put in, she was talking about how there's a lot of pre-packaged moles, and you can buy the spices in various Hispanic markets, and you can buy them as dry ingredients. She even now makes her own dry ingredient, and it was very cool, and I was very happy for this woman. She was so happy. And that lady in the video, she won a contest in Oaxaca for the best mole in Oaxaca, so she's cool.
That's some cred.
Yeah, she's got street cred for her mole. It's serious. And like I said, she has the arm strength of 200 pound men, probably. She is.
Yeah.
She is a strong auntie, and I love her. So now is the point in the show where I plug myself, and then we'll talk about other stuff. If you enjoy this show, you can give us 5 stars on whatever it is that you're listening to it on. And if you want to follow me, it's Dine with the Divine on Instagram, and we're Dine with the Divine on Facebook. And if you really like it, you can, or you want to give me a tip, or you think that, you can give me a tip. I forgot about that. There's a link in the show notes. Yeah, if you want, feel free. Give me $1. I'm good. And if you have any suggestions or comments or constructive critiques, feel free to email me at dinewiththedivinepod@gmail.com anytime. I'm here. Okay, next we're going to get into a little bit, not super intense about it, but we're going to talk a little bit about perfume and spiritual stuff. So I'll start this off I was looking a little bit into the history of perfume, because there's a lot going on there. So one of the first documented perfume makers was a woman chemist named Taputi. Yes, and she wrote all her formulations on a tablet, and they found it in Mesopotamia, from modern Mesopotamia, and she was apparently the perfumer at the time. She was doing it, and a lot of different societies, ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, they were using all these things at the time, mostly for ritual. And I know, Mauricio, you're very in touch with your spirit, and Do you find that like making, you told us that amazing dream you had, so duh, but like also like when you make your formulations, is it like something that you're inspired, you feel like you're inspired by like spirit to do, or something you just, you smell these different things? Like, what's your process almost? I don't know if that's a secret. I don't know how that
No, it's
works.
not so much a secret. Okay, I'll be I okay. I frequently say that as as much as I have ideas of things that I want to make, there certain ideas will shout more loudly at me for attention and come together in my mind a little more easily. And I do think that that largely is does have to do with the way that I think. As I said, I have quite a few personal planets in Gemini. Mercury, Venus, and my moon are all conjunct in Gemini in the second house, which is actually the house of Taurus, and I'm a Taurus, so it's all very making. I like making things. I like creating things. I like coming up with varieties of things, and so a lot of my childhood and my teenage years was spent learning about occultism and all of the different facets of it and herbs and anything, really anything I could get my hands on. I was trying to learn and read, and like at one point I totally thought that, because I was raised Catholic Mexican, I totally thought, because my church in my town was right across the street from the library, so I would go to the library and I would sneak into the sections on the adult section. I was like a little kid.
Yeah.
Look at the books on like witchcraft and demons and like these things that like I knew I wasn't supposed to be looking at. So I totally thought that God was watching me. Diosito was watching me, and I still fucking did it because that's how I am. And so I feel that I created a foundation of knowledge, and I also am constantly reading. There's so many cool new authors now that are writing about occultism, the kind of a revival of witchcraft and occult herbalism is big right now, and it's a really cool time to be alive, right? Like we have these old books like Agrippa and whoever else, but at the same time we have new people writing and researching and teaching, and so a lot of my fragrances are meant to accomplish something, but I don't always know what that is until I've been working on it. So, like one of the fragrances I just released called Bramble is a rose
Smells
fragrance.
freaking amazing, by the way.
Thank
Jesus
you.
Christ. Yeah.
I'm so glad you got along.
I want to drown in it.
Good. That's
Yeah.
where she's personal anointment. She is like the shrine of the self.
Mm.
When she was originally inspired by roses that actually raspberries, pardon me, that grow in the redwood forest that I would go camping in when I was a kid. And I'll still go camping there as an adult because it's still available. And these raspberries, these wild berries, grow along the creeks and along the roads. And I used to pick them with my sisters. And like, I just have these very intense summer memories of the redwoods and the sun and the raspberries and all of the roses that would be growing in the shadows. And now, as an adult, because of my research and my interests and fascinations, I now know that roses and sisters are cousins. Roses and berries are cousins. They're berries, raspberries, blackberries, part of the Rosaceae family. They fall within the kingdom, or queendom, I should say, or empire of roses, since they're so badass. But when I was making Bramble, all these other botanical spirits were like me. One that was really big that I was kind of like, why? Acacia or cassie is another name for it, and
Oh yeah.
I really love the smell of it. It's also one of the species is a source for gum arabic, which is a
Okay.
very super important tree, a tree of life, a world tree
Yeah.
to different cultures, but especially in Egypt. The mother of the gods gave birth to the gods beneath an acacia tree, beneath the solar, because they have these like sun-looking flowers. They look like little, they're thorned and smell really beautiful, and their resin is really nourishing. When people harvest one of the gum arabic species, they subsist on that gum for days.
Mm.
They eat, and that's all they need. And they like do ritual and dance and celebrations and stuff. And so these very goddess botanical species started to come in, and they were like, we're going to be in this, and it just really ended up being this very goddessy Venus fragrance.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. I love how you're so connected to these plant spirits that they're just talking to you.
It's a little, sometimes I'm like, I do find Gemini, I find myself
Mhm.
guessing myself, I'm like, am I just like inserting this? Am I just inserting it? But then if I remove it, it's like wrong. And
Yeah.
yeah, I, as I've gotten older, it's certainly become a little easier to not necessarily acknowledge spiritual messages, but more integrate them. I'm less worried about where they're coming from. So I feel like there's a lot of an obsession on like where something's coming from, where a message is coming from, like
Yeah.
what spirit is like over your shoulder and being like, and it's who knows.
Yeah.
For me, then thanks. And if it's a spirit that I'm meant to develop a relationship with, and there's offerings involved and relationship building, but yeah, it's my process is very organic, but at the same time pretty like meticulous. Like I was trained by a classically trained perfumer, my mentor Ineka Ruland, who's a fantastic perfumer. Her brand Ineka perfumes are really beautiful and elegant. She taught me everything I know about modern perfumery techniques, because when I started I was really all natural. I was only really working with whole essential oils. So now I can reconstruct the smell of different botanical species, which I've done for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature's Red List project. I reconstructed the scent of an endangered magnolia and an endangered orchid, a black cymbidium, the Chinese orchid that heralds the Spring Festival. And it was this beautiful scent. But I feel as though my relationship and my fascination with these plants and these spirits and these concepts, I think, are how they like spin together inside my mind, or however you want to conceptualize the container.
Wait, well, let's go back to what you just said. You got this smell for which flower did you just talk about?
So the orchid was what was it called? Cymbidium sinensis.
Okay.
I remember that because the sinensis, I was like, ooh, like tea. It's this really beautiful black orchid called the orchid that heralds the Spring Festival, because it has a Chinese name, and
yeah.
You were great with the Spanish and with the Nahuatl, but I am not going to try Chinese. That is the translated name.
Okay.
And then the magnolia was a Japanese magnolia. So both of these species are endangered. What the Red List does is assess and categorize botanical and animal species for their current status. Are they threatened?
Okay.
Are they endangered? Are they we're not concerned about them at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I utilize that as a professional resource when I determine my workbench, like what materials I use or what essences or botanical species I work with. Is
yeah,
way of framing it. And I will not utilize extracts of endangered species or threats.
Mm-hmm.
And that means I can't use real vanilla. I can't use real rather I won't.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't want to support the people that make their livelihoods off of harvesting vanilla or caring for her as she grows, or obviously all the plants are different. But I even less I want to participate in the consumption of these beings that whose ability to produce future ancestors is being compromised. I frame it as bearing my weight on this end of the scale.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. Good for you. I love that.
Other people can do other things, and there are sustainable sources for these endangered species, and there's a lot of really cool work being done to protect the species and the communities that depend on the species and live with the species. And also, it's an issue that the communities that, say, harvest frankincense can't access frankincense because of poverty. How does it make sense that the Catholic Church can burn through literally 50 metric tons of frankincense resin for Christmas Mass?
Damn.
But other people that are of the culture to whom frankincense is sacred can't.
Wow.
I'm not interested in participating in
Oh,
that.
so speaking of that, I was actually going to read this other wild number because that's really wild. Just for Christmas? Damn, that's crazy. And I love frankincense, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it smells amazing.
But there's just so much, there's just a lot. It's just something that people can make money off of. people use the resin for medicine, but the essential oil is like what everybody's obsessed with right now, even though it takes so much more plant biomass to create an essential oil than it is to shave a little bit of resin in a cup of wine.
Yeah.
Multi-level marketing companies, essential companies have their people out there being like, frankincense will cure your cancer or whatever. Making
oh my God.
crazy claims. And it's just, what about the trees themselves?
Yeah.
First and foremost, what about the people?
That's okay. We're gonna get back to this in a second. Also,
sorry.
No, stop! Don't say sorry. You're amazing, and everything you say makes me think deeper about something else. Because everything you sound like, but wait, we also have to ask you about this, and we're gonna get to our story eventually. I promise. But the other thing that I read. Another group of people who did not care about sustainability were the Romans, the ancient Romans, at all. They didn't care at all.
They worshipped Mars, I guess.
Yeah.
And not even a fully developed version of that really, like energy. Like it's very that type of energy, but it doesn't have to be that way.
No, the ancient Romans didn't give a fuck. So they were out here. So it was estimated that they used about 2,800 tons of imported frankincense and 550 tons of myrrh a year. And they were using these in their bathhouses to scent the water and in body care items such as balms, oils, and perfumes. That's a lot. Yeah. And then, some Romans, such as Pliny the Elder, who wrote something, I can't remember. They say that again?
No, go on.
No, I'm sorry. They condemned the use of perfumes because of the opulence and wastefulness, and while Rome fell, such luxuries were banned and perfumes were not popular again for hundreds of years. Yeah, because it was like a little ridiculous.
Yeah. It's if you are literal government buildings are designed after these Hellenic structures, like.
It's wild.
And here we are making a bunch of shit that doesn't need to exist.
Yes.
It just really goes back to perfume is made out of either living beings like plants or animals, but most modern perfumers do not use animal ingredients.
Yeah, I know, like for musk and stuff, people have recreated it.
So I'll utilize the synthetic, like I use the synthetic civet in my Demonica fragrance because it's like this very like sensual, like kind of sexy, skinky scent. Yes. It's really cool and it's really beautiful, but I don't want to shake a cage to make this cat excrete. I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
I don't want to.
It's also gross. Like
suffering involved, and I mean so many things. We eat so much. We consume so many things that have the energy and the auras of suffering attached to them, and we don't. But yeah, I'm like just not. That's not surprising, and it's like it's an interesting parallel to.
Yes, it's a lot.
What goes to show what can happen when you separate something from the people that understand it.
100%. I see that all the time. There's so much, unfortunately, especially when it comes to sustainability, there's knowledge that has been lost or knowledge that we just don't listen to because it's not coming from the people that we deem are like important or or like knowledgeable. It's always like a very sweet auntie. It's like that auntie doesn't know everything and she doesn't have a doctorate and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but this knowledge has been passed down to this auntie for like thousands of years. So why are you telling this lady that she doesn't know what she's talking about because she doesn't have a doctorate? Like that pisses me off.
That's like a disease that saturates so many aspects of our reality, the way the world that we live in, or like an herbalist with ancestral knowledge and training who understands body systems and understands spirit, understands that there's different types of diseases that afflict people in different ways, but we prioritize this like very sterile, reductive way of diagnosing people. Like this reductive, sterile way of understanding things exists across the board, right?
Yes.
Humans are reduced to numbers. Whatever spiritual concepts are reduced to mythologies. Spiritual beings are reduced to demons. Whatever.
That's always how it is. This is completely off topic, but if there is a group, not a group, but for hundreds of years, because of slavery in the United States, they had granny midwives, which were usually women in Black communities who were delivering babies. Because they just knew, because someone they apprenticed with the other lady who delivered babies, who apprenticed with the other lady, and they weren't able to go to the hospitals. They didn't have money for that. And then come like the 1950s, the American government was like, actually, you guys can't do this anymore because you're not nurses and doctors and real midwives. But they, and I don't remember the stats, but their like infant mortality rate was like very low. Their maternal mortality rates were very low because they just had that knowledge. But then they were literally not allowed to practice after the 50s because they weren't certified, and they were like, you're not a doctor. Yeah, but they had the knowledge. And it's so sad that we do this in so many aspects of our world, that everybody, don't get me wrong, college is great. If you want to go to college, congratulations, it's no problem. But there's so many different ways to know and understand things. Like, so it's just sad that we discount people because they...
Yeah, and I can imagine that the mortality rate probably increased.
Yeah, it did.
No, that is a real disease that afflicts this country, though, and so it's very frustrating.
Oh, Mauricio, what are we gonna do?
For people who know what they're doing, people that know what to do, people that care about the people that they're trying to serve, but these other systems are prioritized.
Yes, it's very frustrating. Okay.
Yeah, and it's more than just people are denied access to.
That too, exactly. There's so many issues. So also, speaking of, I'm not going to go too much more into this history thing, but the end of the history thing is, like we said, for Europe, at least, after the Romans, people were like, we don't need to deal with perfume anymore because the Romans were doing the most, right? But then in like India and China, they were using it for different things. And what I think is so nice is that a lot of Chinese, and the ancient Chinese, even put perfume in their ink. So when they wrote things, it smelled nice. I love that.
Oh, isn't that cool? Yeah, and imagine, I won't go into this tangent too much, I promise.
That's okay. No, it's fine.
This is a good example of how scent can be worked into a magical practice. Like, I read, still making my way through it, a book on food talismans, so like Taoism and how they create.
Yes, I'm actually about to read that book. I just ordered it, I think. It's by Benabel Wen?
It's by, I'll get you the author.
That's fine.
You can see if it's the same one. But it is by her. It is.
Yes, she's a very nice person. Yeah.
Cool. And I'm like, and honestly, like reading it, like also filled in some like structural gaps in terms of like how I make perfume. I'm like, okay, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't give out too much of the book, but there's so many beautiful ways of that the interweaving of energies is illustrated and expressed in that tradition, in that whole tradition as well. So I just think that I just love stuff like that, like fragrance and introducing plants into these different magical mediums. It's all part of our relationship with them.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. And the Chinese also use perfume for disinfection, which we know that a lot of plants, they also are disinfectants, and purity. And they believe that some perfumes can help rid a room of disease, which makes sense. Some plants are like disinfectants and aerial,
totally, especially the aromatic friends that were,
yes,
the colognes and stuff. That's where after bath theme came from.
Yes.
Now we think of everything as toiletry, but originally it was the root of that is the cleansing powers of plants, aromatic plants.
I love that. So then they started using it as perfumes later on for personal use, but they're Oriental. I don't think we say that word anymore. I'm sorry. It was in my notes. But fragrances that come from that part of the world, like China, they're heavily focused on with herbs and spices, which they also use a lot in their medicine. That's why they would use it in a medicinal capacity also, which is pretty cool. And then in medieval Europe, I don't know why I'm laughing about this. But first of all, in medieval Europe, the Crusaders, of course, they went to the Middle East and they were like brought back all their stuff and they're like, let's use this. Of course they did. So then they also found out how to distill rose petals, which is really, I know, and maybe this is wrong, but I know like Bulgarian rose oil is like very expensive. I know this from 90 Day Fiance, but I know that distilling rose petals it seems like a big business. And we talked about distillation before, but
yeah,
it's a lot.
It is. They grow very well in Bulgaria, but actually it was the Arab culture that mastered the distillation of rose. And we still utilize their discoveries and the way that their technology to this day.
Wow.
In Bulgaria. So
yeah.
It was their props to them and their beautiful roses, but the techniques were developed in the Middle East.
Interesting. And then during the bubonic plague, they would fill those bird masks that you've ever seen with spices because people were dead everywhere and it didn't smell very good. So then they made more perfumes in the 14th century. And Marco Polo, who went all the way to Asia and he came back, he was bringing back all this stuff. He's like, hey guys, we found more good smelling stuff in other countries. And then what else happened? So then, like in the 1600s, it seems like it started to be more of a fashion thing to have perfume than a medicinal or like something like that, in Europe at least. And they were getting some of the stuff like we talked about from animals, but they don't really do that anymore. And because bathing was such an unpopular practice back then, people relied on fragrances to make them not stink all the time. And they were wearing these big wigs and it's like a whole thing. Yeah. So that's that part. That's our.
So it was actually like Catherine de Medici in the 1500s, like you were saying. She's who began to popularize fragrance again, perfume. She had a court perfumer that she brought over from when she was a princess before she was married. She had a perfumer and she brought him, and he was also her court poisoner.
Yeah. Okay, that is in the show, The Serpent Queen. Yes, I really like The Serpent Queen. It's very good. Yes. Oh, that is so cool. And okay, people who do fragrances know all the poisons.
Yes, they're in the same world. And now I suppose we still have to understand poisons because, like, I follow regulations and guidelines that are based in chemistry to keep people from having asthmatic attacks and rashes, burns, chemical burns. But distillation techniques would have been used to extract medicines, to extract fragrance, to extract poisons. A lot of the witchcraft laws that were put into place in Europe encompass things like, so obviously they encompass things like poisoning, but also things like love potions and perfumes, which they all fall in the same world.
Wow. Oh my God, this is so fascinating. And who knew like that it was this intense of a situation? I love it.
Yeah, again, it's like our culture is not a perfume culture, deodorant culture. So we think of fragrance as like a toiletry.
Yeah.
The world remembered that it was like of the gods.
Yes.
It was just like ambrosia. When we make ambrosia, we think of something as ambrosial. It's like sweet, fruity. In reality, it was like super toxic and poisonous because only the gods could consume it. It was like power plants and power beings, power spirits. And perfume, as magic, it has the potential to bring someone out of sorrow, but we could also probably just as easily use it as a spell to wrap someone in sorrow. It's not like that would be super difficult to do with perfume or with magic.
Yeah.
It's just a really interesting how it's all within the same like globe, right? It's all in the spirits, depending on how you want to work with them.
Oh my God, so cool. Oh, we could go on for days and days. So the other. Okay, really quick before we get this story, because I have to ask you this. Okay, you talked before you mentioned like MLMs, and I always think like all these, I don't know a ton, but I know like Young Living and like doTERRA and stuff. There's so much they mass produce all this stuff and people love to buy it or whatever. And I love an essential oil, so I'm not putting myself not in this category, but like, how are they making all these things and not selling them for cheap? But you see these, like a jasmine oil, and they'll be like, oh, this is a $15 jasmine oil. But is it like, it's all synthetic? It must be, though, right?
Yeah, so companies there's two parts to that. There's a ton of adulteration that happens on the market. You see like a jasmine oil that's $15. You can be sure that it's most likely, unless it's like jasmine oil in jojoba oil, maybe sometimes that's a little sketchy, like it says like really little letters that it's diluted in an oil. That's still deceptive marketing. But if someone says like it's a jasmine oil or rose oil, and it's, like you said, really inexpensive, it's more likely be a perfume blend, to be a accord, a jasmine accord, a blend of different natural or non-natural materials in order to get that smell. The companies, like the big multi-level marketing pyramid scheme kind of companies, a lot of the times they own farms that their products are grown on, or they like own the distilleries that people, in order to get paid, have to take their plant mass to from their farms or from their land. In order to have it processed and prepared, and then they get paid according to how many whatever pounds or kilos that they bring in. So that's a thing. So it's usually they own a step of the process, or multiple steps of the process, if not the entire process. And also they own their third party certifications. So if you look up like, we're this certified by this, and then you look up who owns that company, it's the same company.
I'm shocked.
Yeah. Sketchy as fuck.
Yes! I'm mad. Oh my god, that's so fucked up.
It's obviously really difficult for people to find farmers themselves, connect with farmers directly, or find people that are distilling essential oils locally as well. I am very fortunate to live somewhere that, as populous as California is, it still has a lot of plants. Its climate is Mediterranean, although we're also becoming a desert thanks to industrial processes.
Jesus.
And people here are distilling essential oils. People are growing lavender in Napa that I can then use in my perfumes, and source the lavender from France or whatever. So yeah, it usually, if a company has like a really like a kind of an army style distribution process, they own their sources, or at least parts of the sources.
Jeez.
Which means that then it's like they have the potential to pay the people that live in the regions that they're sourcing these plants from very well. They say they do.
You're leaking all the secrets that we didn't know.
I am the Pluto and Scorpio generation. I worship spreading across.
Yes. Okay, now we know all about that. I am sus now of all those. I don't use any of those companies, so I don't support any MLMs. I refuse that.
It's sad how much people are taking advantage of, from the harvesters to the people that are like the reps or whatever they are.
Yeah.
They're like, who makes these companies tons of money? They're reps.
Yes.
Like, the reps aren't going around selling dozens of essential oils in boxes or whatever. No, they're sitting with them in their closets in their cars or whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone, but like most of them probably.
We're mad about it, but
yeah, it's people in I think a responsible herbalist and like clinician or whoever practitioner would acknowledge that essential oils are the very tip of the health pyramid, of the phytochemical pyramid. The base of the pyramid of health is food. The plants are primarily healing our foods.
Yes.
And all the phytochemical constituents that come along with them, like turmeric as a food, have tons of rich compounds that we can utilize. Not literally tons, obviously.
Yeah.
Many. Oil is also useful, but again, it's like we're meant to consume these beings, incorporate these beings into our beings in order to replenish ourselves in a specific way. And essential oils are really useful, but when they come with the cost that they do, I think they should be considered precious.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm fired up. Okay. I'm like so mad now. Oh my gosh. All right, so it's story time. Yay, we're gonna tell a story. We talked a lot about Oaxaca. We talked a lot about mole. So our story comes to us from the Yucatan Peninsula. This is a myth, which is very exciting. I just like this myth a lot. So you think of the Yucatan Peninsula, two places people think about is Cancun and Tulum. Those are two places that are there. If you've never seen pictures of those places, look, they're gorgeous. Never been, but one day.
Oh, I'm going in 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my cousin, or actually my family's first destination wedding, even though we're from Mexico, I'm already here. So yeah, I'm stoked to go to Cancun.
Nice. Have fun. Awesome. Okay, so here's our story. So there was this really nice village, and in this village lived these two ladies. They were both very beautiful. One lady was Ichabod, and her name actually meant sinner. And the other lady was Kolel. We'll say Kolel. And her name means good woman. So they were both beautiful, okay? So this is a situation. And Kolel, she was like very virginal. Like she wore white all the time. She didn't look at any boys. She didn't look at any girls. She was just to herself. And she's like, I'm just like a perfect virgin queen. That was her thing. She walked around just, I'm so great. Everything's great. Ichabod, the other woman, was for the streets. And she didn't have a problem with it. It wasn't an issue. It's no problem. She was out here. She was beautiful. She got the attention of a lot of suitors. They gave her stuff. She had sugar daddies. It wasn't a problem. She was out there with whoever she wanted to be. And she wasn't ashamed of what she was doing. Nor should she have been. So the thing that you need to also know about Ichabod was she was super, super nice. Like she was super sweet and kind to everybody. She was always helping people who were poor or had less than her. And she was always helping. Oh, she would sell stuff that men gave to her to pay for food for people who didn't have enough food. Or, yeah, she's such a good person.
Yeah, the cooler Robin Hood. She had a good time.
Exactly. So, like, she was out here. People were like, oh, she's out here, like, sleeping with dudes. But she was actually helping the community. So shut up about it. Like, she was doing such good things.
You're doing judging? No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. She was. Yeah, because the other girl... Khalil was just out here being like, ugh, whatever. So Ichabod was out here helping people, and Khalil, she was just rude. And people actually didn't like her, but they admired her for being so, like, virginal and whatever. So she was a prude. Let's just say it. She was a prude. But she, like, looked down on people if they were poor or sick. She didn't like that. She wouldn't touch any of those people like the way Ichabod was. So... one day, I guess, people were walking around the village and people started smelling this, like, really good smell. And they didn't know where it's coming from. And they all directed to this one house. And they realized it was Ichabod's house. And they got in there and Ichabod was dead. And I know. It was so sad.
Just die, so it's fine.
Like, the village hottie, she was dead. And it was terrible. And everyone was so sad. But... in all the sadness, everyone's like, oh no, she's dead. Khalil was like, why does she smell so good though? I don't like that. She's like, she's dirty and I'm not dirty. So like, she shouldn't smell so whatever. Khalil was like, you know what? When I die, if she smells good, I'm going to smell twice as good. People are just going to be, they're going to be just around me because they're like, she smells so delicious. Okay. So then, when it's time to bury Ichabod, all the poor people in the town, people who came from sick families or they were sick themselves, they held the funeral for her because she's the one who had been like their, like you said, like their Robin Hood. She was helping them out. And all the animals from the forest came to honor her.
Yeah.
Isn't that cute?
Having a good time, being slightly darker, everybody likes you. It sounds like she deserved to have a fragrant afterlife.
Yes, and I was so happy. When they buried her, these beautiful flowers started to spring from her grave. And the flowers they're actually called Itibentun. Itibentun? I don't know. I have to look. I'm probably not saying that, but it's spelled Xtabentun. So these flowers, they're smelled. I think they're white and like viney. They grew from her grave, and they smell delicious. And everybody's, wow, this is amazing. After her being such a slut, like how does she have all these nice flowers? So then, of course, time goes by, and later on, Utzkolel, she dies, and everybody was like, oh, wow. They're like, wow, she died a virgin and she's such a good person. She never gave up her quote unquote purity or whatever people wanted to say. And then they buried her and it stank. It smelled so bad. People were like, ew, this is nasty. They probably dug her up and buried her outside town because they were like, we can't bury her in this town. It smells so bad.
Oh.
Yes.
What an interesting story. I want to.
No, go ahead.
No. I briefly looked up the name of the flower because it did sound familiar to me, and it's Pacific species of marigold.
Ooh.
Or morning glory, not marigold.
Okay.
Marigolds are also very important in Mesoamerica and Mexico, but they're different.
I love marigolds.
The morning glory are the ones that grow in the vines, and they're usually like purpley flowers, but they're white, like you were saying. And were very important to the Aztecs and to Mesoamericans because their seeds are hallucinogenic, psychotropic. And so missionaries would burn them whenever they saw them. Because obviously, how a plant having more authority and power to connect human people to the divine than they themselves was an affront to the church.
Wow.
This beautiful smelling... She sounds very like underworld goddessy to me, especially since those flowers bloomed from her grave.
Yes, that's how I feel too. And she just had a good soul. She was just a good person. So Utzkolel died and she had that stinky grave. And in death, apparently Utzkolel was like, yeah, she totally missed the mark. She didn't get it. She was like, I guess it's cool to be a whore. She did not get the point of what had happened.
You enjoyed 2023.
Yeah. Exactly. She missed it. So then she basically came back from the grave in a way as basically like a weird ghost, and she returned to Xtabey, became her name, and now she sits under also going to mispronounce this, it's a specific kind of cactus called the Tzamcam, Tzacam. A flower grows from it, this cactus. And she sits under this ceiba tree. I guess this is also where the cactus can grow. And she sits there and she combs her hair with the cactus and waits to seduce and kill men now. Because she's bitter.
Yeah. Man. Women love becoming ghosts in Mexico. My grandma used to tell me about seeing a bunch of them when she lived on the ranch. Like, that she lived on. There was like things of like ghostly women in their like nightgowns floating around.
Oh my god! I know.
They're mad. Yeah, they hold grudges. Mexican ladies hold grudges.
We know that Utzkolel turned Xtabey. She just held a grudge because she was like, I should have banged when I was alive, and then I didn't.
She did have, and then she would have smelled great.
Yeah, and she would have had fun because she would have been banging. And then she's like, damn, I stayed a virgin my whole life. This is stupid.
Yeah. Now she gets to comb her hair with a cactus under a tree. And her sister's like this like psychedelic plant.
I know. Her sister is this wonderfully smelling psychedelic plant and people are just enjoying their experience. And she's just out here poking people and seducing and murdering them.
I wonder what happens to the men that she does whatever she does to you. Because like my grandparents had all kinds of stories of spirits that would be on the roads. And like one time my grandfather, this one might have been like more of a myth, like whatever, but he said that he heard this crying baby. He picked it up and it was like, he like was like, what the fuck? And he like picked it up and he like, I don't know what it said. It said something like, what are you doing out here so late? And it had teeth and he was like, what the fuck? He was like, it was the devil. He threw it and ran home, galloped home. But there's multiple experiences. Like my grandpa got up to shit. I know.
That's so scary.
Middle of the night on the roads of Mexico, being chased by like black dogs and stuff. Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, I feel like That sounds just like Ghana. My dad's from Ghana, and it's always some weird ass shit. Seeing like floating ladies with no shirts on who have no legs, and I'm like, what? It's in the middle of the night, and then there was a guy with fish teeth, and I'm just like, I don't.
You know what my grandma used to ask me all the time before she passed was, it was like a rhetorical question because she knew the answer, and she would be like, why don't you think there are any spirits here? She's like, why aren't there spirits here? Because she would see someone. She lived in Mexico. She would see someone, which is probably where I got it from.
Yeah, probably.
She's my maternal grandmother. And she was like, it's because even the devil's afraid of Americans.
Your grandma's a boss. She's right.
Yeah.
I love your grandma. Oh my god, she sounds awesome.
She had all kinds of stories in her sayings and jokes. Yeah,
Aw, I love that. Even the devil is afraid of me. She's right. I know. She was right. Oh gosh. Oh my god. That brings us to the end of this episode. This has been so fun. So, Mauricio, just tell us where you want to be found on the internet and all that kind of stuff.
So in that black hole. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's a wild place, the internet. I grew up at the beginning of the internet. When it first came out, dial up, the whole thing. And honestly, actually, occult, of course, on theme. My experience was largely occult forums and stuff.
Yeah.
So we're still on forums and things. But anyway, you can find me not on any of those because is on Instagram at herbcraft.perfumery or at Petaled Serpent. That's my more kind of personal one, I suppose, where I do talk more about ecology and magic and also list memes and shit, whatever. The Herbcraft one is more perfume, and my events where I'll be talking about classes that I have coming up that are going to be really fun, that people should definitely come through if they're in the Bay Area or if they're visiting. I may have some digital ones, so definitely keep your eye on my events page of my website for that, which is herbcraftperfumery.com. If you're interested in sustainability or sustainability in the fragrance industry just as a topic, you can visit sustainableperfumery.org, which is the website for the Coalition of Sustainable Perfumery, which I co-founded with a group of other perfumers. And there we have interviews with fragrance house people and ecologists and a list of endangered species that are used in perfume that you can take a look at your product's ingredient lists and see if they're in there, if that's something that is of concern to you. Or you can email me questions about anything at mauricio@herbcraftperfumery.com.
Yay! And I'll put all those links in the show notes too, so if people want to go check all the stuff out, you can. Oh my gosh, this has been the most fun! I love this. So, thank you so much. And Oh, of course. And I'll do my little last plug. So, again, I'm Dine with the Divine on Instagram and Dine with the Divine on Facebook. Like I said, you can give the show a 5 stars if you enjoy it. And you can follow us on Apple, Spotify, whatever platform you listen to your podcasts. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please email me at dinewiththedivinepod@gmail.com. If you want to follow me, Ashley, I'm at SankofahS. That's SANKOFAHS. And Sankofa Healing Sanctuary on Facebook. Again, Mauricio, you have been awesome.
Oh, you're awesome. This has been really fun.
Yay. Okay. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us for another week. And I'll see you next week and have an awesome week. Thank you. Bye.